Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really great to be here this evening, and I love visiting Europe a lot as a European. It's still a European, just about. Very happy to be over here and chatting to folks. Very passionate about Fluent Design. It's something that I guess I've worked on going back a long way now, and we just launched it back at Build, so it seems like it's a new thing, but really we've been working on this for years, and I know there's a bunch of MVPs here. I think we were chatting earlier about how, oh, were you actually working on this a few summits ago and you couldn't tell us? And it's like, yeah, we were. So it's really good to finally kind of have this out there and be able to talk about it and so on. I think we should probably keep this quite informal, and therefore, if you want me to stop and explain stuff, just shout. I don't know if we have a sort of like an official time limit on the proceedings. 9
o'clock.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock we need to be out of the building.
Okay.
Or else we will never get out anymore.
Okay, we'll get locked in for the night, and it's Halloween, so.
Do we have another beer?
There's no beer here.
A lock-in on Halloween with no beer. That doesn't. So yeah, I mean, we'll sort of just go. I'm going to basically share with you a presentation that I did a version of at the Ignite conference quite recently, and I did another version in Sweden quite recently. So I've sort of got slides and code, but I'd love to kind of try and not have it be just me talking and awfully formal and going through it. I do interject. Feel free to heckle me and ask me questions if you'd like to as we go through this. So with that, I'm going to start off just by playing a quick short video at the beginning, just to sort of get us all a bit more excited than you are now. So here we go. Let's watch a video.
How are you all doing? We call this Fluent Design.
Not just about making things look good, it's about making things work well.
We want to invite all of you to learn more and participate in the evolution of the Windows design system. Thank you all very, very much, and thank you again.
So that takes us back to sort of Build and unveiling, and it reminds me that this is sort of part of a big thing for Microsoft, which sometimes when you get in and work in the weeds, you sort of forget that this is the company behind this thing. So what I'm going to do really is divide this time up and spend a little bit of time up front talking about, what is it and why does it matter? Why should you care about it? We're going to spend some time building an app, and I'm going to sort of weave around and show you a couple of different apps. I'm going to go off the reservation a bit here, so forgive me if things go horribly wrong, but that's me taking chances. And then we'll point you at some resources at the end for those that want to go kick the tires and play around with some stuff. I'm using my delightful pen clicker. This is a Surface Pen, and I found this awesome app that allows me to advance my slides with it. So I'm very proud of this innovation that I'm wielding in front of me. So let's start off talking about what is Fluent Design and kind of why did we do Fluent. So if we sort of look at the device landscape and see how it's kind of evolving over the course of the years and decades. We're familiar with laptops, we're familiar with tablets, we're familiar with the smaller form factor devices, but we're seeing increasingly sort of a more diverse range, and so things like big screens, these devices that you put on the wall, things like screens that you put on the desk that you can touch, and obviously our Surface family is really pushing the boundaries there. Latterly, our mixed reality investments, and obviously we had HoloLens, which was a dedicated HMD device that ran universal apps. And we now have the Windows mixed reality environment. And so in every machine that's running the full creators update is that capability, and you obviously need to put hardware with it, but nevertheless it's there. And that obviously is adding an extra dimension to the equation. It's no longer just a 2D environment that we have to think about. And then if you think about the other extreme on the left-hand side, 0D, what does that mean? Well, that's the notion of voice-powered devices. That's the notion of, taking away the pixels and adding a new modality there. And so speaking of input, input is another big part of this equation. And, we've lived with very sort of similar input for quite a while, like obviously mouse, keyboard, and touch is even relatively kind of been there for a while. But things like game controller, things like speech, again, is kind of proliferating across the spectrum. Things like dial, things like pen, and then things like 6 DOF controllers, 6 degree of freedom controllers that you use to control mixed reality. And that's really quite a bewildering set of things to have to consider. When you look at the matrix of the different screen sizes, the different inputs, it's quite an overwhelming matrix. And so this was one of the big things that we really wanted to take into consideration. If you think back to Metro, you think back to our previous MDL design language, that was very much targeting like only a small form factor of device. That was really only targeting mobile. And it did a great job at that, but it started to break down as we tried to apply it to sort of a broader sort of tapestry of different environments. And so we wanted to design Fluent really from the get-go to target this very broad spectrum. The other change that has really been coming about is just what users expect from software and kind of the experiences that users are kind of demanding from developers. And no longer is it good enough just to have your app run on a single device. It kind of needs to run on multiple devices. It needs to run, on multiple flavors of phone, and it needs to take advantage of the capabilities that are unique to those devices. And also just like the notion of mobility of experience, like can I move easily from one of these things to another? And this is where it gets interesting. If you're sort of halfway through doing a task using one kind of modality, maybe you're starting to kind of think about a to-do list and you sort of start composing it and you start maybe using a voice assistant to do it. You then want to kind of later on move into your productivity space and you want to reference your to-do list. And so you just expect that that's the same data that's coming from the cloud. You expect that it's kind of being presented in a way that feels natural on the device. And so really these two things together, this sort of greater expectations and experiences and a much more heavy emphasis on sort of creativity as part of productivity, as well as this sort of range of devices, really that's kind of what has been the genesis of Fluent Design. And one of the other things that I think we've actually been very happy with how we've seen the reaction to this is that we've really tried to approach it as a system, not just as, here's a new version of Windows or here's a new version of an operating system and oh look, it's got some new sort of shininess in there. But no, very much we've deliberately gone in to try and build what we think of as a system, and that's the platform pieces are the core pieces of the system, but things like the guidelines, like how are designers ever going to be able to sort of get their heads around this? And we know that to have a successful design system, designers are obviously one of the most key important stakeholders in the equation, and they need guidelines. They also need tooling. I mean, we've all worked with designers that use things like Photoshop, Illustrator, Sketch. There are many tools that are commonly used. And if those things aren't there from day one, you're never going to get anything good coming out of it. So we've really tried to go and think about that up front and really have great resources, guidelines, tools, and also samples, I think, is another critical thing. And this is something I'm particularly passionate about. Those that have been following my Twitter stream know that I probably do way too much sample kind of tinkering, but I'm a big proponent in don't tell me, show me, build great samples and have great samples. So, we're really trying to do these end-to-end samples as well as kind of the point samples to show, this is, here is a canonical Fluent Design app that you can go kick the source code tires and really play with. So the other thing that we've talked about that is true here is we're not shipping this as a single thing, as a single release. We're not going off for kind of 5 years in a dark room and we're going to come out, ta-da, here's our new thing and we've got it all fully there. It's definitely going to be a kind of a wave by wave thing here. So, you know, the first wave has just gone out in the full creators update, and that we are already working on and looking forward across the, you know, subsequent waves, and being very deliberate about the things that we go do and bring on over time. So it's exciting and it's great. We want the feedback. You know, you heard a number of references to that in the video. Like, we really want the feedback. We really want, if things are not working, if we didn't get it right, we really want to tune it and hone it. And then we believe that over time, over this series of waves, we're really going to be transforming what the experiences can be made here. So we now have another video, and this video is trying to show some of the sort of innovation, or some of the adoption of Fluent Design in the inbox apps. And these are not all necessarily shipping. This is not an exhaustive list either, but unlike in previous eras, in previous kind of moments in time, you can think back to some of the sort of attempts at design languages earlier on in Microsoft's history. We weren't always great at really adopting it very broadly in apps, and so it felt odd, it felt disjointed. And this time we've really been more deliberate about working closely with the apps teams to really try and kind of get that going as quickly as possible. Woohoo! And that dog was my dog, by the way. I don't know how they got hold of a bunch of my photos and used them, and it's like every time I see that, it's like, oh, Nelly, it's my dog. So, you know, why should I care? Like, I've got an Android app, I've got an iPhone app, I've got a website. Why do I need any of this Fluent Design stuff? So this is something that I think we hear a lot, and you probably hear it, you probably think it as well. And I think this is sort of the first time, and I don't think we've actually got a perfect answer yet. We're really working on perfecting an answer, but I think we really want to try and face this one head on, because we really do believe that with the breadth of what you can do here, that we really can have a better experience. So this is a guy, I think his name is Samuel Clay, and he is the inventor of a service called NewsBlur. NewsBlur became popular, I don't know if anyone here uses it, it became popular when Google Reader went away, and it's kind of a cloud-based news environment that has clients on different platforms. He's got a successful business model. He didn't make the mistake that Google did of making it free and trying to sustain an ever-growing user base with a free service. He actually kind of charges a relatively modest annual fee. And he's got some pretty cool collateral already. So he's got an Android app that's pretty decent. He's got an iPhone app that's decent, and he's actually got a pretty decent web experience as well. And so we sort of have given ourselves a little bit of a challenge here, which is we think we can actually build something that is a lot more kick-ass. Like, if you're a desktop Windows user or if you're a tablet user, we really think we can do some stuff with Fluent Design that will really, for his user base that are on Windows, that may be using the website now, that they will actually would prefer to use, you know, a Fluent Design version of the app. And so this I tweeted today. It's kind of a little skunkworked. In fact, it doesn't look great because I think the resolution is downsampling a bit. But this is a sort of a take that we've been doing on his app. It's an open source app, and it's an open source kind of open web service that we can call. And we're building this in the open, so you know we've got a GitHub project for this. We've got a number of people like Scott is a fool, I'm sure everyone knows, is helping us with this, and various other people. And we really are sort of setting ourselves the challenge that can we actually build something that users will prefer? Like if we put these side by side and actually get past the whole, I don't know where the store is or whatever the barriers may be, and just say, here are two experiences. We really think that that we can come up with something. So it's an experiment. It's a hypothesis. Satya tells us, you've got to kind of try and do things, and if they don't work, then you learn something. Don't not try for sake of failing. Let's push the boundaries here. So this is a little personal thing I've been working on, and I'll show you a little bit more about it in a bit. But I want to now transition into building an app. Who here has seen a version of this before? Like anyone at the Build come and see the Fluent Design session? Maybe you didn't go to Build. Hopefully not, because there is some stuff we showed there, although it has changed. So you can be honest. So I'm going to show you one of our end-to-end samples, and this is something that we started off back towards the beginning of Build, or as we were preparing for Build. Again, we wanted to try and have something that incorporated all the different Fluent elements in a single app that was actually sort of a real app, as opposed to, here is a fake page that has a bunch of fake Contoso stuff on it. We wanted something that was a bit more real. So let us transition over and give you a little quick demo. And here we go. So once again, this is again open source. I will be providing a link. You can download this and run it, and all of this. We actually pushed this version, I guess it was over the weekend, from sunny Sweden. So the code I'm running here is fully out there. So the first thing that you hopefully can see on the projector there is this sort of translucent effect, and this is kind of one of our materials. This is a kind of characteristic of the Fluent Design system that's trying to bring in this notion of kind of more real-world materials. The second thing, if I start to kind of resize the window, is it's a responsive kind of app as well. And so into the Fluent Design system, responsiveness is kind of a key thing that really is how we can get across the different screen sizes. And we want to make sure that the controls kind of have this built in. So I've got this nice navigation control on the left. It's called Navigation View. It's one of the new controls, and it sort of has a bunch of the smarts automatically built into it to kind of be responsive. Another thing that I'll show here, and there's a slightly humorous thing that I will then build upon this later, but notice how I've got this rather nice parallax effect. And so as I'm scrolling, you can see this sort of nice parallax effect. It's the skull and the Seattle. You can see the mountain is sort of peeping out on the right-hand side there. And parallax is something that we think it has a lot of legs on it, because it really speaks to the broader kind of question of depth. And we think that, again, as you start to consider mixed reality and more three-dimensional displays, depth is going to play a key part in the equation as well. So the next thing we'll do is just have a look at some of the animation. And animation is a key aspect of Fluent Design. And so as I kind of navigate through the app, I've got animation, and then we've got these things that we call connected animations, which is where as you transition between pages, you have a much more sort of fluid and seamless transitioning of kind of, particularly from a master to a details page, this kind of notion of continuity or connectedness between the pages. And so that's animation. The next thing is, I think, inking. Is that the next thing? What else have I not shown you? I'll show you the now playing experience. So the now playing experience is kind of highlighting some other aspects. I'll just turn.
We're going to go outside today and see something cool.
So we'll turn this down. So the now playing experience, we've written a kind of a visualization plugin here. So this is sort of showing some of the power of the interoperability that we have with Win2D and DirectX. And again, this is open source code. You can take it and put it in your app today. And we did things like implementing picture-in-picture mode and full screen. And we also built a kind of a custom scrubbing control. So I can sort of pick this up and drag it, and there's physics and a very smooth interaction that has just broken nicely for me. Bang. Very nice. It's a real demo. It's not fake. It's totally real.
And recorded.
And recorded, so the world can play it again and again and again. So that's obviously a bug that we introduced over the weekend, but anyways, not to worry, let's go back there. So the other thing that we wanted to do is to incorporate things like inking, and so I can come in here and tap on the inking icon, and inking is great. It's very, very easy to incorporate it in an app now. We have this thing called an ink canvas, and it's literally just 2 little snippets of XAML, and you can kind of circle the suspicious looking dude and that sort of thing. And if there's something you like if you like the Ninja Cat, you can try and draw heart. I'm not very good at drawing hearts, and so I'm actually going to show you how the system can help me. And actually, if I draw a circle, the system will actually recognise that and transform it into a glyph. So this is using sort of our smart ink intelligence. It didn't like the guy, it likes him so much that it doesn't like him. And we'll have a look at that code in a minute. But I think that is a super quick kind of overview of Buildcast. And what we're going to do now is... Yes, sir?
Does it do something now? So in this app you have your inking functionality.
Yeah.
So is it linked with the video, or do you need to do something special?
Yeah, no, it's not actually linked. I mean, so you can do, basically we did a simple thing, which was we implemented bookmarks, so you can go down and it will actually store. Okay, this is total demo fail mode now, but theoretically it should store. Okay, something is very bust. The QA department needs to be involved in this process. The theory is that you can save... Actually, I'm on the wrong video. That's part of the problem. Is that what it is? No? Okay. Something's not happy there. The theory is, we didn't want to go and implement something where we were actually doing it sort of per frame basis, like an animation basis. Would have been a more complex thing to do in a sample, but you absolutely can, and I think there are apps that have done that as well, to actually be able to go in frame by frame. In this one, you can basically take a snapshot and it saves that as a bookmark, and you can then go and retrieve it. Good question, though. Thank you for that one. So, alrighty, let's now proceed and show you how to actually build some of this stuff. So I showed this slide at Tech Days. I don't know if anyone did actually want to try and follow along, but because the demo tends to dive all over the place, people are like, I'm completely lost, show me the code. So I did create a series of commits. I think we were talking earlier about how someone was hating GitHub a lot. I quite like Git and GitHub myself, but there you go. But I did learn a very important lesson, which is when you're jet lagged, don't try doing rebase in Git. You won't be fine. You end up with all these weird extra merge commits and things that you didn't mean to have, and so I apologise for that. But you can, as I say, if you want to follow along and just sort of see the progression of this, you can do that. So what we're going to do is sort of walk through some of the different ingredients here and add, sort of on a case-by-case occasion, go into the code and attempt to add these things. So we're going to start with a navigation view control. So this is a new control that is essentially providing kind of a navigation. I like to call it a spine for the app, because it's really trying to kind of give you that index. It's trying to give you that center of gravity as a user, a place that you kind of are looking to go to. It's kind of a common place, and it gives you that kind of organization in your app for free. It also supports kind of resolution, or not resolution, it supports kind of scale independence, and I showed you that kind of adaptiveness just now. It's already optimized for the different inputs, so if you're using a pen like me, if you're using touch, even Xbox controllers and things, it's optimized for those things. And it's also kind of accessibility ready out of the box, and so it will support narrator and those important kind of accessibility things. And then finally, it kind of does bring this kind of high quality feel, and when you sort of compare some of the before and afters, you can really see and feel that kind of, I don't know, I think it's a thing where you use it and you sort of feel a certain way, as distinct from you look at it and go, oh, that's a shiny object. I think something comes through using it that you just have to use it and try it. So let's use it and try it and see what we think. We're going to go and add that. So, yes, sir.
Do you need to set the main version of the app to FCU to use it?
That's a really good question. For all of these features, you can kind of use them incrementally. There is a very nice feature, I'm not sure if it's actually in this first example or not, let's have a look, called conditional XAML. So if I go to navigation route.xaml, that is the, let's try that again. What I have up here is I have this conditional namespace declaration. You can see it's prefixed with an RS3. And what's happening that's clever here is it's basically got this extension that says if this contract is present, essentially make that namespace valid. And so in this example, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cheat and I'm going to uncomment the one that I made earlier because it's much easier than making me type it all in. And what you can see I've done is here I've actually used this conditional prefix on the control. And what that will do is at runtime, if I'm running on a lower version, if I'm running with my min version set to a lower version, and at runtime we detect, oh, we're running on RS2 or RS1, then that tag will essentially not be kind of utilized at runtime. So the immediate question is, well, great, now I've got no navigation view, what do I do? So you would have to, in this example, kind of fall back to something like maybe the community toolkit has a navigation capability and navigation control. I had a version of this that I showed at some previous conference where I actually demoed that. And so you would get kind of the standard navigation and hamburger menu, and then on RS3 you'd actually get the navigation control. So we don't. I think the toolkit guys are going to bake that in to a future version of the toolkit. You'll be able to use their thing, and you'll then get the automatic fallback. Another good question there. So what I'm basically doing is I'm taking my navigation frame that I had already, and I'm literally just wrapping it inside of the navigation view. So I still have a frame. I still do all of my navigation. I haven't actually shown you the before version of the app, which is a little bit of a fail on my part, but we can rectify that rapidly. So this is what the app looks like without any Fluent Design added to it. So it looks a little bit more utilitarian. You can see, well, there's no navigation here. I can still navigate around. It still works, but I feel a little bit lost. I'm not quite sure where I am in the app. There are no animations. It feels a bit more jarring as we navigate around. So clearly some room for improvement there. So with the addition of that single tag, and again it's basically a wrapper control. There's a series of menu items, and those are just very simple things that we've bound to commands. With that simple addition, we should now hopefully have a bit of navigation. And so far we've had catastrophic demo failure. Let's see if we can have catastrophic developer failure, or compiler failure, or something else. Because it is Halloween after all. That's great. So there is our navigation control, and I didn't really talk about the reveal highlight effect. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but all of that is there. And I have my navigation capability has come back. Alrighty.
Is it responsive by default, or do you
It is, yes. I was a bit too quick there, wasn't I? Let's launch it again. So it is responsive by default. If I collapse the window, it just does the right thing. It actually also, the material that I'm using is intelligent, and it kind of adapts. So you can see that it's now, you can sort of see down on the bottom left, the yellow is shining through. The yellow is coming from within the app window. When the window is expanded out, it was actually coming from behind the window. So you can kind of see the material is adapting there. So yeah, I mean, we're trying to make this, in the past we talked about beautiful UI and so on, and we talked about, well, we're going to make it possible, then we're going to make it easy, then we're going to make it default. And this is really trying to make it default. This is saying you put the control in and you just get the goodness. It's all baked in for you. Another good question. Alrighty, how are we doing? On to the next thing. So, and by the way, we were going to have a break, I think. Was that the plan, Glenn?
Depends a little bit if
it's too soon probably now, yeah, but
how much demos you need to do. So
yeah.
Still 50 minutes?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, if you want me to stop and we'll take a breather, just say the word. but I shall keep ploughing ahead for now. So we're going to now start to talk about this concept of materials and specifically acrylic. Yes, sir.
About the conditional example, does that work on the entire range of devices, like HoloLens, Xbox, everything?
It works on Xbox. HoloLens, I don't believe they've done an update for RS3. I may be wrong about that.
But Xbox is on RS3.
Xbox is on RS3. That has come out, and this sample almost works on the Xbox. There is a late-breaking bug they found. I actually found it with this sample, where the kernel forwarders for .NET Standard 2 were removed right at the last minute, and that means that a whole bunch of APIs that came with .NET Standard 2 basically crash on the Xbox. So it was a bit of a last minute oops, we just broke things. There's a fix is about to come out for that, and when it does, all of this runs on Xbox as well. Yeah. Any other questions? I shall keep ploughing on. So we're going to talk about the acrylic material. Now, back in the day of flat design languages, I shan't name it again. I've already named it once. We had this rather nice colour palette. It's very colourful, and we had this recommended series of colours, but they're very flat. And I think we talked about in the past this notion of sort of authentically digital, and I think that was a great sort of waypoint on the journey, and it was very successful. We had obviously a lot of imitation as the sincerest form of flattery. We had a lot of imitation, which suggests that it was a good step. But I think, particularly as we start to think about mixed reality and three-dimensional worlds, I was saying this the other day that if you went into a virtual world and everything was flat colours, it wouldn't be great. Like, it really wouldn't feel very immersive. So, textures and materials are part of the real world. They're part of the thing. They're part of what makes the world have character and personality. And really, we think that they're an essential ingredient to how we want to evolve the design system. So, acrylic is our first kind of go. It's sort of modelled after this notion of a kind of opaque or semi-opaque kind of plastic material. Our materials will be intelligent and smart, and that means they'll adapt to context. They'll adapt to if they're running in mixed reality, if they're running on a device with low power, they will respond to the background. They won't necessarily just be kind of like a bitmap. They won't just be a picture of a material like in the old days. They'll actually be implemented using the GPU, using the power of the system to kind of come alive. So the first one that we have is this thing called acrylic. It's a brush. You can literally just apply it to any piece of XAML by applying it as a style. You haven't got to go in and write crazy code, shaders and loading in textures and stuff. It's literally just a markup-based thing. And you get to pick, different sort of presets out of the box. So again, we can just give you these different weights, these different tints, and you can also do kind of your own custom tints as well. So, a couple of the things that are good about the acrylic material. Well, first thing is it's sort of a building block, and it allows you to kind of build an information hierarchy in the app. You can really partition and structure the app using the materials nicely there. And it also, as I said, adapts to context, and that context I showed as we had the collapsing of the menu, also things like power awareness. Like if your machine is starting to get low on power, we can intelligently turn the materials off that will kind of start to conserve power. We can also determine, like, if the app is in the foreground versus not in the foreground. We want to avoid that kind of, everything is massively transparent. We kind of had that in Windows 7, Windows Vista, that notion of, I've got so many title bars that it's kind of inception of the title bar, Can't really tell what's in front. And again, we want to avoid that and make these things kind of slightly smarter than they were before. And also, yes?
So you say that these materials are intelligent, but can you put your own way of rendering in it yourself?
Well, that's a really good question. So these materials, and I don't have the slide here, but they're made up of a series of layers, and those layers are using different shaders and different textures and other things. We haven't exposed knobs to customize the materials that deeply so far, and we've had this question actually quite a lot since we've been traveling around. People want to kind of tweak the material and adapt it without changing it and rebuilding it from scratch. So I think it's something we will definitely take into consideration, because we do have this fairly powerful system. We actually have a great sample called the material editor, which I did a demo. I think it was it Ignite? I can't remember. Where I actually created a gold material. Like we were talking about money because we were in Las Vegas, and I wanted some really nice gold, and we sort of shone a light on it, and it was really reflective and beautiful. And so this is a cool sample that you can grab from our repo that shows you how we actually we use this tool as we go and build materials to kind of do some of that customization. But I think it's a great piece of feedback. We need better customization out of the box. So let us go forth and add some acrylic now. And again, this, if you've played around with the composition APIs in the past, you may be a little bit scared about, oh gosh, I'm going to have to go and type all this stuff. It's actually much easier than those days of old. So I've realised that I've shot myself in the foot, and I've turned off my XAML tools. So I now need to remember. Can anyone remember what they're called? They're runtime tools. That's what they're called. And they're down here, and I need to show my runtime tools, bang, and there they are. They're going to light up in my app. There we are. Right, so what we're going to do is show you how we can add some more material in there. So if we go in and look at channel 9, what we have at the moment is this very flat, and again, this is sort of the previous design language incarnation of this kind of screen, where you have a solid colour, it's very flat, and this was kind of fine on a smaller device, on a smaller screen. But as you get to a desktop machine with a bigger screen, it starts to feel a bit claustrophobic, or a bit kind of, maybe that's the wrong word, maybe it's just very stark. You're looking at this huge surface that's a solid colour. So wouldn't it be nice if we could just easily change that and make it a bit nicer? So what I'm going to do is select this with my runtime tools, and I'm just going to jump me there. I'm going to sort of teleport to my XAML DOM, and I'm actually going to teleport to my source code, hopefully, and find that rectangle. And there it is. There is the rectangle. You can see it's currently set to system accent color, which in this example I'm using blue, true blue for the day. Should have used orange because it's Halloween. So let's get some orange. Let's get some orange. By coincidence, the Channel 9 logo has a lot of orange in it. and so if we add the acrylic material in at this place in the DOM, I'm going to steal my definition from above, and I'm just going to replace my system accent color with an acrylic. And lo and behold, we have a nice Halloween orange there, which is perfect, very fitting. But you may say to me, well, that's not orange enough. That looks a little bit too yellow. And so I would say to you, well, let's go to our resource definition, and I'm going to hit F12, and here is my resource definition. You can see it's just a standard brush. It's a standard brush that's living in a resource dictionary, and it's a little bit yellow because it's using lemon chiffon. Of course it is. How about we actually use some orange for Halloween? And I don't know if that's too subtle on the projector. How about we use some red, because there's probably going to be some blood out there tonight. It's a bit redder. So you can see this is kind of what you'd expect. It's XAML. It's not shader code. It's editable at runtime. So my app, this is my live running app. I can change it on the fly, and it's giving me this kind of texture. It's giving me this more naturalistic look that allows me, in this case, I'm bringing the feed, the sort of the branding of the feed through. If I kind of go and look at one of my other feeds, let's see, what else do we have here? We have the MS Dev Show. You can see it's bringing through the MS Dev Show branding. So it's kind of a nice look, and it kind of allows us to sort of escape that very flat, uniform kind of world. Now, there's one more thing I haven't done here, which is to actually, if we rerun the app again, you may notice that we have this. It's starting to look a little bit ugly, this title bar, and as we sort of go and have our nice. Oops, I obviously didn't save what I just did. That was unexpected. But as we start to have these nice textures, really that kind of giant title bar thing kind of starts to feel a little bit less than desirable. So I'm going to jump over here to my theme, select a service, and in there, hopefully, is something called, what is it, setup title bar. Bang. And so this is just essentially going to be a pretty simple tweak. I've got a core title bar, and I'm going to basically say I want to extend that, I want to extend the application content into the title bar area. And so I'm just going to say true to this. I'm on a little bit of a kick around windowing, and I don't know if anyone here has been following any of the discussions, but I really want us to kind of improve our windowing APIs for EWP, and this is a very small thing that we have today, the ability to get rid of the title bar. But I think there's a lot more windowing stuff we need. So if you come across windowing APIs you wish we had, please let me know. Or not. But anyways, in the meantime, hopefully we now have a little bit nicer of an edge-to-edge kind of feel here. And there it is. Slightly marred by the XAML tools, but that's fine. They're there for helping us out. And it's starting to feel a little bit closer to the example I showed you. There's the red, the Halloween version of the acrylic that we had there. Scott Hanselman featured in the Halloween version. What are we going to do next? Yes, sir.
Wasn't it with the original title bar that the title of the app was inside it?
Yes.
So what happened to...
Nice. You spotted it. Yes.
Okay.
So one of the things, and I've actually, no one has ever called me on this, and I've never...
Sorry.
No, it's great. So, yes, you're absolutely right. So when you do extend into the title area, what you get to keep the non-client Chrome, so like the window buttons, you can obviously color them, and I think you can turn them off if you want to. But you do lose the application title. And it was a real learning experience as to how to fix that. And in fact, here is the final version. And notice if you're interested... Whoops, it's crashing again. It's Halloween. It's the Halloween edition of this talk, where everything is going crazy. So notice right now that...
If I click the title, the app crashes.
Yeah, there's a ghost. It's like, behind you, behind you. Okay, so this is... And it's all on video, so it's like, this is never going away. So I'm not going to hover over there anymore. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to navigate and watch what happens. Look at that word. In fact, maybe I should even zoom in to show this without hovering. And I'm going to click, and notice how it has to move out of the way because we now have a back button. And it has to be positioned correctly in terms of height, and there's all these sort of things that you have to do. And I'm going to risk it, and there it goes back again. So in the spirit of agile development, there is a nice little helper class that will be making its way into the UWP Community Toolkit that kind of handles this for you. I didn't show the code here. I can actually. I think the code does exist. I think it's commented out. So if we go to let's see, navigation route. I think that it is actually commented out here. So yeah, there's basically a text block, and what I did is I instantiated my little helper class. It's using the theme resource to get the size. It's using a binding to my title bar helper to control the visibility, and it's getting the title, the margin it's getting from the system, the title it's getting from the app model package current display name, which is what it actually displays. So this is sort of how we would recommend putting it back. It's out there in GitHub. We want to put it in the toolkit. Ultimately, we'll put it in the platform. No one has spotted it before, so you win a special prize. You get to drive me back to my hotel. Hurrah. Alrighty. How are we doing? Do you want to take a break or keep going? I've got probably one more demo, maybe two more that we could do, and then take a little break.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah. All right, so let's move on to the next one. We'll jump back to PowerPoint. We will go back to the deck. We'll see if our nice pen clicker still works. Yay, sweet. I love this. This is so cool. So next we're going to talk about reveal highlight. And you've sort of seen this already. I've shown it in passing as I've kind of hovered my mouse about the place. And this was something that was very much inspired by some of the work we did in the composition API. In fact, I'm going to go off the reservation now. I'm going to go off the script, and I'm going to show you an ad hoc, unexpected demo. I'm going to show you our sample gallery. Now, some of you may have seen this before. Any show of hands? Anyone who's seen this? A couple of people, not many, which is good. So this is sort of demonstrating, as opposed to here is an end-to-end sample, this is actually showing here's a bunch of essentially features in the platform that you can use to do different things. And one of the things that we have in the platform is this lighting system. And so these are some of the early kind of mock-ups that we made that were showing, this is essentially a Phong lighting. For those of you who've done computer graphics, this is a Phong lighting system. And it really is doing, true lighting. It isn't some sort of bitmap being moved around. It is actually calculating a lighting equation on the GPU. And as a consequence, this is a list view. It is a control. It's not a bunch of images. And you can do some sort of pretty interesting different effects. It's applying a normal map in this case. So we have a pretty powerful graphics kind of base in Windows. And the thing that we found was we took this to the apps teams back in the sort of RS1 era, and they were like, we don't know what to do with this. Like, this is crazy. This is kind of lighting system. Like, what do we do? And they really, and I mean, part of why we have done Fluent is to take some of this and really think about it deeply, and how can we apply this? Where does it make sense? And we think we've actually found quite a good place to apply lighting, and that's really what Reveal Highlight is. So Reveal Highlights is essentially a new capability. It's built into a whole bunch of the controls for free. So if you just use the controls, you get it. And this is one of the first examples of what we call a cohesive interaction visualization. That's a mouthful. What does that mean? Well, really, again, it comes back to this notion of making sense across the different form factors. And I think I'm going to go off the reservation again because it's quite fun. I quite like it. So I'm going to show you two sort of demos. The first one is I'm going to just re-show you the actual effect here. So if we zoom in, you can sort of see this light beam. You can see it sort of highlighting on the borders as I come close. You can see as I sweep back and forth, it is actually kind of applying this lighting model here. So that is an example of it running in a flat app running on my desktop, and I kind of like it. I think it's a cool effect. It feels decent. It's, again, an example of when you use it and when you feel it, it's different from when you just watch it and look at it on the screen. However, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into something else. I'm going to go into this thing called Mixed Reality Portal. So this is pretty neat. This is essentially built into Windows. I've got a Xbox controller here, just in case, and I don't have an immersive headset, but this is a kind of a simulation environment. It's running at a lower resolution than it would on the actual head-mounted display, and this is designed for us developers so that we can go in and test our apps. And so you can kind of have control inputs mapped. You can do things like have Doom mode, where you use your keyboard, ASWD, and so on, and use that to navigate. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to kind of illustrate the sort of notion of what does Reveal Highlight look like in 3D. So if we come up to our Skype window and you sort of see, hopefully you can actually see, that kind of Reveal Highlight treatment is kind of working exactly the same way. And again, with mixed reality where you have gaze and you don't have a controller and a thing that you're aiming, but actually you're looking, it's a very important thing that shows you where you are actually looking, where you're interacting with in 3D. And so when we talk about a cohesive interaction visualization, I think it was the mouthful I said earlier, that is exactly what we mean here. Now, we'll come back a little bit later on and show you some more stuff in mixed reality. But for now, let's keep going through here. So get your pen, click away. Stops working. Now I know why it stops working. It's when we use the Xbox controller. Great. Okay. Right. So it's a cohesive interaction visualization. It works well with the different inputs. So it works well with the mixed reality inputs. It also works well with pen, with mouse, obviously, and even it can work with touch in a hover mode. And it helps to focus on what's important. And it also helps to have, again, when we think about the previous design language, we were thinking very much in terms of consumption, right? It was sort of, everything is a little bit bigger, it's a little bit dumbed down, it's a little bit more focused just on consumption. But what we want to do with Fluent is we want to apply it to productivity scenarios. And in productivity scenarios, you have very dense commanding. You have lots of buttons. You think of those sort of ribbons and toolbars. You have lots and lots of elements there. And the thing that's nice about Reveal is you don't have to have all of those dividing lines all over your screen. Like you think about the Windows 95 era of the ribbon, or the older versions of the ribbon, and you had all of those lines, and it was like, you look at it and your brain explodes, because all of these lines and all of these controls and dots and buttons. And by taking that away and instead using light and using something contextual, you can still get that sort of delineation and that separation, but you don't have to have all of these lines and all of this clutter. So we really think that it is quite a nice addition there, and you'll see us use it more extensively as we roll out Fluent over the next few releases. Shall I show you a demo? I will show you a quick demo, and I think we'll then take a break and give everyone a breather. So this is the last of the demos for this half, and what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're actually just going to show you how easy it is to add that reveal highlight effect. Now, reveal is built into many of the controls. We've seen it in the navigation control, we've seen it in things like some of the toolbars and lists, but there's a spot here in the UX where it isn't built in, and we're going to go and add it. So here it is in the list view. As again, I'm now in the dark theme. You can see quite clearly the reveal highlight effect coming over the buttons there. But if we go to our now playing view, notice how it isn't there. So we've got the old sort of behaviour. We've got that sort of solid border that appears. We haven't got it. And once you start to kind of notice and get used to this, you start to kind of miss it when it's not there. So let's fix that and jump over and do that. So we're going to come over to a file called custom.mtc.xaml, and we're going to have a look at our buttons. And you can see these buttons are styled. We've got a nice resource. We obviously like to use resources for styling things because it makes them reusable. It makes it very easy to have the same style on multiple different controls. And if we have a look at our style definition, what we see is we've got a couple of properties defined. We've got width and height and margin. We haven't done a massive amount of styling here. But because we've got this common style, it's very easy to essentially update it and add some reveal highlight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little based on snippet, and I'm going to basically say, this style still targets a button, but now I want you to base the style on this system style called button reveal style. And once again, there's no crazy shaders, there's no crazy lighting coefficients and depth maps and all of this other stuff. It's literally just a piece of XAML, it's a piece of styling information. You change it in the markup, and you can get this effect just as easily as that. So let's go to now playing, and hopefully now we have that reveal highlight effect on the button there. And it was that easy. So those of you that have sort of come and watched talks and been following us over the years, you'll definitely see this pattern of make it possible, make it easy, and then make it default.
James, how you're now in a darker environment, so reveal actually helps a lot.
Yes.
How does it work the other way around? So if you're in a light app,
yes.
Does it go to dark mode? Or?
It's bar.
Hey, here he is.
Congratulations on making it, sir.
Thank you.
No, it's a great question, and I think this is where it looks better and it's more obvious. I think when you see it on the machine, it doesn't translate that well to projection in the light theme. I actually find myself preferring the light theme with Fluent. I think without Fluent, I prefer dark, but on my desktop, and again, it doesn't really translate well to projection. I do find myself liking the light theme because you get some really nice effects here, and it just feels, I don't know, it's one of those things. You either love it or you hate it. I'm a lover of it. But also, if we go to the custom view where we're actually got this custom color, again, you can sort of see it quite clearly there as well. Another excellent question. So I think we're about halfway through, roughly. We've probably not got as much time left. So, what do we want to do? We want to take a little breather?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Do you want to dance? Like I went to this talk and this guy made everyone dance. Like it was bizarre. I don't think I'm going to inflict that on you right now. Have a breather.
Small break.
All right. Let us carry on. So basically, I'm going to show. Let's see what I'm going to show. I've got 3 more demos within here.
Connected animations, that's for sure.
Connected animations I'm going to show you, and I'm going to give you a spoiler about some stuff in connected animations. I'm going to show you parallax, and I'm then going to show you crazy parallax, which has a killer whale holding a flag, which is kind of insane. And then we can do a little bit more mixed reality stuff towards the end. So I think it probably will be about another 30-ish, 35 minutes maybe. Obviously, stop me if there's stuff you want me to kind of explain more. So we're going to talk about Smart Ink. I showed my demo of the love heart at the beginning. I'm really actually, and this is genuine, this is not me being a shill, this is actually me, genuine James, who does come out and is out here today. I really like ink, and I actually, in all seriousness, do find myself, using these devices in this mode more and more. It's the sort of thing that I didn't touch for years. I owned a Surface Pro, I'd never really used it, and I think the new pen, the new low latency ink, and the new OneNote, the modern OneNote app, is the set of things that has really made me start to use it. And I literally can show you. And in fact, I'll do this just so that I can prove my genuine nature here. Like literally, these are all the notes that I take.
You can actually read that?
I can't read that. I can read it usually with some half-life of decay. But yeah, I mean, over on the index, I take as many things in ink as I do in sort of text. And so I am a believer, and I do think one of the things that I love about our hardware team is they're really trying to make some of this stuff really great and really integrated. And ink is something that, we didn't invest in it for many years. I think we brought it out in 2002, was it 2003 roughly? Tablet PC. We then kind of dropped it for a decade or so, but now we're really investing, and there's some really cool stuff that will come. In the future. We're not done by any means, and we're really looking at really improving it in all dimensions. So the first dimension is just having it be natural and efficient and easy. And so we're looking at how can we just make the system more natural to use. One example, and again, I'm going to keep dropping out PowerPoint, I apologise, but I'll show you this because I like it. One example in the Full Creators Update that we've done is we've actually inverted the behaviour of of the pen. In the old days, if you had list views and you tried to sort of manipulate them with the pen, you wouldn't be able to, because it would be trying to select the text, and it sort of meant that you're sitting here holding your pen, you're trying to use your computer, and it just doesn't work how you'd expect. We changed it in the Full Creators Update, so now when I kind of touch a list, the default behaviour is it scrolls, which is kind of the natural thing you want. And then if you hold the little button, it will then go in and I think you can select the text. I think if I come in here, that's sort of the secondary action. And Now it's not going to work because it's Halloween once again, and it's not going to work. So, oh, there it is. It is going to work. So we've inverted that model. We've made it. We're trying to make it more natural and just sort of more easy. The second thing we're trying to do is to add intelligence, and we talk about this in terms of ink intelligence. And this is something that, again, we think there's a lot of opportunity in, and this is where we start to sort of think about AI and things like that, and imagine how we're only really at the beginning of what we can do with some of this recognition capability today. So today it's shapes. I think there's way more that we want to do with that. And there is already, to some extent, custom gesture handling that you can do, where you can essentially take the output of the recognizer and you can do something with it in some sort of pseudo-intelligent way. So what better way to show that than a demo? I'm going to show you how we can actually go from hearts to something more appropriate. We'll figure that out on the fly. I don't know what it will be. It will be a surprise. I'm going to run, and it may be a challenge. We may end up actually not being able to demo anything, but we will do our best. So basically, the way that this works is I have an ink canvas, and the ink canvas is the thing that gives me the basic ink capability. And so what I have in the app right now, if we jump to our now playing, nothing is playing, that's a bit of a problem. There's probably nothing downloaded, which is a problem, and I've got no network, which is a problem. So instead of this, we're going to jump to the finished app and show it here. And it's going to crash. Okay. Deep breath. What are we going to do?
Did you lose your network?
Actually, no, I do have a network, don't I? Yeah, you gave me network, so I'm actually lying to myself. I'm faking myself out here.
It's recorded.
And I'm doing it on tape, so I can never escape from this the Halloween show evening. So what we're going to do is we're going to, in all seriousness, take our ink canvas. We're going to take some glyphs that we draw, and we're going to do a recognition pass, and we're going to go and spot a common geometric shape called a triangle. So we're going to jump into one of these things. We're going to play it. Am I in the wrong version of the app? I'm not sure. Okay, so here we are. But basically, if I go into my inking mode and I draw a circle, we saw this earlier. It's doing that recognition. It's transforming that circular geometry into a glyph. And the thing that's interesting is if I draw a big circle, it'll draw a big one. If I draw a small one, it'll do a small one. If I can get it at the right angle on my angled screen here, which I try harder to do and fail, so we'll fail at that one. But it's essentially taking that geometry and allowing us to use it in how we then apply it back as a glyph. So I'm going to come in now and actually add a different piece of recognition. So if we come over to ink.node.xaml.cs, and the function is called, in fact I probably could have done that in one step, it's called analyze ink casing. Isn't this magic? So what this is doing is I'm hooking up something called an ink analyzer to my ink canvas. My ink canvas is the thing that basically takes my input and it draws the nice real-time ink. I hook up my ink analyzer, and then in my analysis code what I do is I essentially I wait for the system to recognize that ink has been applied, and then I basically go and search for all the ink drawings that have appeared, and those are essentially all of the sort of individual annotations that are there. What I then do is I basically loop over those. It's just a collection that I can loop over. And in this example, what I'm doing is I'm looking for an analysis or drawing kind that is a circle, and when I see that circle, I'm adding a heart, which is essentially just adding that symbol to the page, and I'm then removing the ink stroke. So it's pretty simple, nothing too complex there. So here I'm going to take it a little bit further, and I'm going to recognise a triangle glyph, And here there are two different types of triangle. There's actually a regular triangle and then there's an equilateral triangle. They're two different triangles that it will recognise separately. I found it, in this example, I'm just going to recognise both of them, treat them both as a single kind of triangle. And now what I'm going to do is pick an emoji, and so we're going to use the new emoji picker to pick an emoji, and we're going to then add it into the scene. Now, the thing that's interesting is if we look at this code in here, the interesting part here is I'm actually getting the bounding rectangle to my geometry. So this is what makes it kind of intelligent, is you know, I'm getting those parameters available to me so that I can then use them and apply them and actually kind of customize the output based on the geometry that the user drew.
James, do you need to customize it? Is there a potential to just say, drop in the regular shapes, like you already annotate for a circle? Can you just say, just draw the circle instead of
you could, yes, you could, absolutely you could. So yeah, I mean, I guess the point here is, you know, the recognition and the rendering are separate. So there are cases where you may want to recognize a particular shape and then do something special that isn't necessarily drawing. There are all sorts of examples. If you look in the inking sample gallery of intelligent positioning of text, automatically recognizing where to put paragraphs and things, where it isn't necessarily what is being drawn that translates into, sorry, what is being inked that translates into what is being drawn. In this case, I'm using the ink to determine just like what should I draw and where should I put it, if that makes sense. But you could, in a simple case, just take the ink glyph and then essentially draw it straight.
Yeah, but do you need to iterate through all the symbols yourself? It's like if I just want to have
a circle.
A circle, yeah. Do I need to detect it and
yeah, I believe you do. I don't think that we do.
There's no basis set of regular shapes that you just plug in.
This is something that we're looking into, and I think we may have added something here in RS3. I know that, you know, there are some demos you see where it's like, oh look, I'm drawing a circle, and oh look, it's now snapping into an actual circle, and here's a square. There are obviously applications like that they automatically erase all memory. All right, let's go back to our now playing and hopefully see if this will work. This usually gives me a little bit of trouble for some reason. Magic. So now I can use my emoji picker, and now this is where we sort of find a Halloween one, which may just take too long. Oh, we could have pizza, I guess. That might be nice. Yeah, let's have some pizza. So there's our pizza. So, you know, it's kind of a stupid demo, but I think, you know, there's actually quite a lot of power there, and there's quite a lot of, obviously, you know, it requires you to have an ink-enabled device, which, you know, they're not hugely prevalent, but with that said, I think, you know, the opportunity is there, and it's only going to increase, I guess you could say. So, smart ink and emojis and general hilarity with software has happened. Let us now move to the next topic of connected animations, and this is one of my favourites because actually, you know, animations in general add a lot to an app, and I think they add a lot in terms of delight. They add a lot in terms of user engagement, and I don't know, those of you that may use the OneNote client may have experienced some of the new animations that they added in OneNote. They're rather nice. I guess if you haven't seen them, I'll show you them quickly. But the reason this is interesting is we talked to the OneNote team about their experiences with animation. And basically, you'll notice as I expand this, there are these various kind of different animations that occur, and collapsing and sort of physics and things. And when they rolled this out, they saw a big uptick in feedback and in sort of some of the instantaneous ratings they were getting in the app. Users really love them, and we also have data and evidence that show that it isn't, that translates into essentially engagement, that translates into amount of time spent, amount of, kind of repeat visits to apps when, you have an app that has this sort of more fluid, more animated character versus one that doesn't. It's the one that does that kind of has the repeat visits. When you don't have connected animations, you have this very abrupt kind of navigation experience. You have this kind of, and in fact there's a fade in PowerPoint, so it's not as abrupt as it actually is in the app that you were seeing just now. But it's this sort of hard cut. It's this sort of, it feels like the old web page that we were used to from the 90s. Connected animations is really saying this kind of connected transition, taking an element that is common to the sort of destination page and the source page, and having that kind of be a common animation that moves amongst the pages, moves between the pages, and gives that much sort of greater sense of smoothness and sort of connectedness of experience. And this is something that we see as being a common kind of common thing, and really for scenarios where master detail is present, we really see this as really the preferred way of doing it. It's something that adds usability. It makes it, you can really see or retain the context of where you're coming from, where you're going to. Also, when you're going backwards, in many cases, the backwards direction is the one that it's easier to get lost. Like, I'm coming back from somewhere, where am I going back to? And so again, we find it really helps there. And as I mentioned, really, again, we have the data to prove it, that it really does increase user engagement as well. And it's something also that is relatively easy to implement. And I say relatively, you'll see what I mean, and you'll see how it's going to improve as well. So with that said, let us show you also how it's incrementally adoptable. We're going to go slam it in the app right now. So on to the next piece of code. So the first thing to do is run the app and just show you that, just remind you how bad it is without the animation. And this is sort of commonly what you see in many apps. It's just that hard cut. It's that sort of jarring. There's a little bit of flickering. It just doesn't feel. It doesn't feel nice, and it doesn't look nice, and it's just, I don't know, not polished, not refined, brutal in some way you can say. How do we make it better? Well, we add a connected animation. How do we add a connected animation? Really, connected animations is about, it's the mechanic of connecting where you're going from to where you're going to. And so in this example, I'm going to go from the handler that we have, the item click handler here. And normally what I would do in my click handler when I'm doing a navigation is I literally just call the navigation service and I say, please navigate from page A to page B. I want to go to a page of type, whatever it may be. So to add a connected animation, we add this extra step. And the extra step, and it's in code right here, it's an imperative thing, it's not in markup, is we have to do this prepare connected animation. And this is actually an example where, because we're going from a list view, we're not just going from here is an image on the page to here is another image on the page. We're actually calling this method on the grid itself, on the grid view. It's not a list view, it's a grid view, as it turns out. And so basically what we're doing is we're specifying, which item was clicked on. That is the source object. We're specifying a sort of the name that we want to use, because we need a kind of common name that we can refer to on both pages. And with that common name, it then enables us, after the navigation has occurred, to actually trigger the connected animation. So if we go to the target page now.
James?
Yes, sir.
Can we interrupt? Sorry.
Yeah.
So in this instance, you made it yourself easy because your grid is only showing the visual for the podcast.
Yeah.
So you only have your image. So say for instance we have like in a list view we have more data available.
Yes.
Do you still need to specify the image or the one item that you want, or is it the whole selected thing from the grid?
Yeah, so it is harder in list views, as we've learned, because you have to know exactly the thing that was clicked on, and so
But that's not the same thing, no? You in a list you click on the list item, but you probably only want to visualize an image going through a connection and not the text.
Correct. So in that previous example, the second string was the name of the object. So it was like, this is the item, this is the name of the object within the item template, and then here is the thing that we're going to call it to pass it
It
across.
searches itself through the visual tree to...
It does. So that method that I just showed you is a new thing that we added. So this prepare connected animation on a collection control is a new method to make this easier that we added in RS2.
Okay.
And as I say, this piece of text here I didn't actually call out. The third parameter is the name of the object within the item template that it's going to grab. Now, you'll see in a minute that this is will become a little bit of a moot point in the direction we're going, but for now that's how it works. This is now the second page, so this is a different. I've transitioned over to the target page, and in this code, I'm highlighting this image opened handler. So this is actually going to fire when the image on that page is loaded. If you don't do that, if you don't wait for the image to load, then you may end up with a weird visual thing happening, because if the image hasn't downloaded from the internet yet, then you haven't got a destination that's there. So this is sort of a recommended approach to avoid that, and it makes it kind of work a bit better. What we do here is again, that named element that we gave it that name before, we're retrieving it, and then we basically take the animation that we get back, and we just try and start that animation. And so it's literally that thing of you set it up on the page you're departing from, on the page you're going to, you then retrieve it and you start the animation and it runs. So that is kind of how it works today. It's pretty easy. It's not dead simple though.
That's in one direction. What happens if the user presses the back button then?
And that is a good. I thought again I was going to get away with it, but
Nope.
This is a sharp audience tonight. This is great. Yes. So to do that, we do actually have to handle the back direction separately. So if I search for in fact, if I just come here, it's easier to say on navigating from. So again, there's a different piece of code where we look for the back direction, and we essentially prepare the connected animation in the back direction, and we have to receive it going backwards. Now, this is actually you can start to see how there is definitely room for improvement here to make this easier. And so I will actually just show you this slide to make the point a bit more easily. So this is what it looks like today. There's markup and there's code. In the markup, it's really how you name things. In the code, it's this retrieval, and it's the retrieval by ID, and then setting it up with a common name, and then you actually on the receiving page you start it. One of my dearly beloved members of the UWP Community Toolkit team worked closely with us, and he actually took the source code to Buildcast, and we said to him, please go and remove all of this imperative code and turn it into some nice SAML behaviors, some nice SAML helpers. And what he did was this, and basically this is entirely markup, and this is essentially a single piece of markup on the two sides. And by doing this one thing, you get both the forward direction and the back direction hooked up automatically. This is going to be massive. He's actually got the pull request out already, and there's a version you can go and play with already out there. This is going to be really nice. He's also done work, and again, I haven't told other audiences, I'll tell you this. The other thing that we've done in the app to make the animation smoother is we've actually used show hide animations, and these are new animations that have come in RS2. And so if I run this version, this is a version we just worked on, and we added a connected animation, but I didn't go and add all of the other animations that make it feel so smooth. because I didn't want to kind of, for many audiences that are not as dedicated as you lot, they're like, I'm not interested, I just move on to the next thing. And so what you see here is you see just the connected animation, which definitely does make a difference. And you can see that if you look at this text here, Channel 9, Microsoft, etc., you will see that that is also animating. So if you watch closely as I click, you'll see that that is also essentially tracking with the object. And that is something we call coordinated connected animation. But if you look at the rest of it, you can see that both in the forward and back direction, everything else is just popping in still, and it's flashing, and it's not so nice. In the finished version, we did a lot of fine-tuning using show and hide animations to kind of have these different translation effects and these different fading and these different staggering, and we did it in both directions. And you can do things like make the whole page fade out, so you can say this object is going to translate down, the page itself will fade, this other one will slide around. All of those things are also imperative in this code. Like if you were to go and look at the sample, you would go and you would see all of this, I think it's called initialize or, let's see, what did we call it? It's not in there. It's not in there. Is it in here? It's probably in here. Yeah, so configure animation. So all of this sort of nasty imperative code that's going in and fishing stuff out, and it's configuring all these weird Byzantine properties and things. The result is great, looks gorgeous. It's a pain in the arse to get that stuff to happen. And so the other thing that Nicola has done as part of this set of helpers is he's enabled all of this additional kind of animation to be done from markup as well. So he's literally in what I showed you in the PowerPoint. If you go and look here in GitHub, all of the animations that we did and we added can now be done using his libraries from markup. And this is actually pretty cool. I haven't really talked about this broadly. But it's coming, and it's definitely something that we think is going to be really popular.
It's going to be in the community toolkit.
Yes.
Okay.
So I mean, obviously, we're considering how do we do this in the platform. But the good news is we can ship something in the toolkit like within a few weeks and get it right now in RS3 and not wait for the next turn of the crank. So we're in the home stretch. I'm going to show you some parallax. We're going to see the killer whale demo, just to get the crazy to 11 for the evening. But let's start with the sort of less crazy version. So parallax is this sort of rich scrolling experience, and this I think is this a video? I thought it was yeah, there you go. So it's this rich kind of thing that can be used for scrolling. You can see that they're sort of portaling the top items, and it does give that sense of depth and that sense of what is a foreground, what is a background. And this is cool because it kind of allows you to really highlight things that are supposedly a background effect versus a foreground effect. And it does bring this level of immersion. I think in the examples that you're seeing here, the immersion is not great. It's not a very big amount of immersion. But it nevertheless is bringing a certain additional sense of sort of depth to the experience. So I think the reactions that we've had against these are pretty positive. And one of the other things that makes these stand out is the performance is really smooth, and we've again plumbed it to be beautifully smooth, beautifully independent. It's running in a different process in the compositor, and it's also very easy to hook up, and I can show you that right here. So let's do this final code demo very quickly and show you how easy this can be. So here we're going to go back to our home page, which is called home.xaml, not surprisingly. And in our home page, what we have is this this image. Sorry, not that image. This image here. And the image is just a static image. It's just being loaded in. We've given it a name and bound it, but it's currently not. It's currently not kind of actually doing anything more than sitting there. So if we launch the demo app and scroll, you can see it's just sitting there benignly doing nothing. And this is another example of kind of wrapping it in something. So in the past example, we were wrapping the navigation frame or the frame inside of a navigation view. In this example, what we're doing is we're wrapping the image inside of this thing called a parallax view. And the effect of this is again, to kind of bring that parallax effect to life. What we've done here is we've said, what is the source? And the source in this case, you can think of as the source of scrolling. Like, parallax needs something to scroll in order to move. How do you know what you want to move? Well, that's what the source is for. And it's literally that simple. And again, I think, you know, if for those that have been to MVP summits and have seen some of our demos, you'll have seen us go, look, it's amazing. You can do it in 10 lines of code. And you get this incredible performance, and it works with pen. And obviously that's powerful. But to be able to just get it from markup and just be able to put in a coefficient and get it, I think is again, it's just making it much, much more easy and default. And if you want to go in and tweak it and change the sort of parameter, you can add a parameter in there and change the sort of amount of parallax. You could even have multiple levels. You can think of, and we started to sort of brainstorm and go, well, you know, what if we actually cut the mountain out and put the mountain even further away, and then you'd actually really have this sense of multi-level parallax. And, you know, maybe some of these buildings, and you've got these trees, and, you know, wouldn't it be cool if we sort of made this more 3D? And so that was the challenge I gave to our designer. He's a slightly crazy guy. I will not lie. He's awesome though, and he's probably watching the video. So. Eric. And this is really sort of doing two things. It's showing taking the concept further, and how by adding multiple planes and also by adding an actual camera into the scene, you can really get this sense of depth and immersion, sort of plus in really a much more sort of extreme way. So let us show you this parallax demo that Eric made. So this is pretty badass. We were trying to cut out Seattle in Photoshop, and they said, well, look, we've got this guy, this sort of 3D guy here. He can just make you a city in 3D. So we literally made this city in 3D. And sometimes when I run this, I get the animations, and other times I don't. I've not figured out why that is. But in this case, it's not giving me the animations. But again, you know, we have this ability to sort of track the camera, and depending on where I'm putting the perspective and configuring the perspective transform, I get these completely different effects. But in all cases, you can really see in a much more extremely accentuated fashion how this 3D, you know, depth, the sense of depth can really be brought to bear even on a 2D desktop display. Now at Build, and I don't have this demo here, but at Build we showed how you can actually take that and put it into a mixed reality environment and actually have a sense of depth, even though it isn't like it's not a Unity project. It's not using meshes. It's not using, you know, an actual 3D scene. It is using a 2.5D projection. But even with that 2.5D projection, it's possible to kind of make it feel as if it is giving you that 3D sense of depth in mixed reality. So that is the crazy demo. For those wondering, I don't know if anyone is wondering about why there's a killer whale there. I don't know whether you care or not, but we have a football team in Seattle called the Seattle Seahawks. We also have a lot of orcas that swim around, and so he basically took the two and came up with an orca that supported the football team. So there you go. So those are really the demos. I did have the mixed reality world. I had the news reading app that I showed right at the very beginning, and this is the news reading app running for real. We got it kind of roughly working today, and you know, we were talking about this in the context of, wouldn't it be great if we could take a desktop experience that is essentially a web browser and actually translate it into a truly native desktop experience. And one of the things that's quite fun with this is to say, well, you know, here's our app. Let's now shove it into our mixed reality portal. And actually, as we've been having discussions on this trip, the thing that I think has sort of resonated with the people is, as we have to start worrying about mixed reality, it's really sort of, it's adaptive UI or it's responsive design in 3D now. It's like, you know, we have this notion of it's a big screen, it's a small screen, we've got to be responsive. And as you start to go into 3 dimensions, there's a whole new range of dimensions of being responsive in. And so I think, you know, this is definitely going to be an interesting one where we're sort of exploring a new continent in many ways. If you think about the metaphor of arriving on a continent for the first time, like you have no idea how big it is, you have no idea what's here. There are things that are going to kill you, or, you know, food, you really have no clue. So you start exploring it, and I think VR and AR, we're definitely in that very early stage of just exploring the continent. So anyway, I'm going down into my movie theatre, and here's the app. You know, again, we sort of hacked this together today. It's all live code. There it is. You know, I can sort of go in and take a look at it, and I'm finding it hard to see here a little bit, but I can go and read about Android if I want to, or I can go to an Antec. And it's not loading. Okay, this is literally demo fail in extremis tonight. But anyways, it's still, you can see the app running at least, and it's using Realm. It's powered by Realm, so Realm works nicely in AR. Excellent, good-o. So yeah, I mean, just to kind of close it out. There's really just a couple of resources. There's our killer whale that we saw. There's our nice build cast running in mixed reality. So there's really just 2 resources here. You know, the first one I think encapsulates most of what you're interested in terms of like, what are the styles, what are the guidelines, how do I change navigation view? You know, a lot of really good questions that you guys have been coming up with. That's a great place to go, aka.ms Fluent Design, or I think it's fluent.microsoft.com as well. And that will link you off to a bunch of resources. In fact, one thing I didn't show you is this, which got a lot of happy faces when we were showing it, but this is actually Adobe XD. This is a design tool, and we've actually shipped a bunch of templates for XD. We've also shipped templates for Illustrator, Photoshop, Sketch. So you can give this to your friendly designer. These were all done. This is completely real. And it's using the templates, using the tear-offs to build a complete mock-up. And it even has this sort of prototyping mode where you can actually kind of connect the artboards together and actually build something that will kind of run. So, you know, this you know, we actually had comments about even this isn't working. It's literally like every single demo. Wow. That's incredible. That's literally almost 100% failure. Fantastic. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, serious point. The tooling is a big deal, and it means that designers can kick the tires. It means that companies can envisage and play with ideas. We have a lot of fan art. Like this is one that I love. That was, wouldn't it be cool if Netflix built a Fluent Design app? And guess what? With these design toolkits, you can go and envisage that and put it together. And you know, wouldn't it be great to have a Netflix app that looked like that? We really think this is a big part of it. Having the tooling in place, having the templates, allowing more people to come in and play with Fluent, you know, we think it's a big deal. So, yep, all of those resources are linked. The source code is there. It appears that it doesn't work, so don't bother downloading it. No, I'm kidding. It should work on a good day. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Thanks for your patience, and you know, hopefully there's some value here obviously love questions and feedback and whatever you have in reaction. Yes, sir.
Does the Fluent Design stuff also work in the XAML designer?
It does. It does.
The new one or the old one? Or both?
It works in the new one. So the designer team has completely redone the designer. If every single demo hadn't failed, I would attempt to show you, but I just don't think I've got the stamina left to try and show you. But so they now actually have a completely different execution architecture for the designer that lets it essentially run all of the same shader code. They're no longer kind of doing their own rendering. They're no longer interpreting the XAML and drawing it themselves. They're actually using the system to draw it. So much as you have that real-time ability to change the app as it's running, you can also see it running live in the designer as well. Yeah.
I've asked you before, but is there a fluent way of opening a content dialog?
There needs to be one.
Yes.
I actually, it's funny you asked this on Twitter, because I'd actually sent mail internally about this a little while before, and there was a thread where the developer that owns this feature had said, yes, go and do it this way, and I just had not had a chance to actually try it. So part of why I never got back to the Twitter thread was I wanted to actually try what he'd suggested. I think we're going to want to improve what we've got. I think there's going to be opportunity to make it nicer than what we've got. So, I mean, I think it's a great piece of feedback, and I think wherever we have UI that's just appearing, we really want it to not just appear, but actually have a nice transition. So I think in general, that's something that we'll be looking at more and more.
Thank you.
Yeah. 15 minutes left before we're going to be out of the building.
So,
I was already sweating.
Yeah, I know.
if there are no other questions, I think